Hello, folks, and welcome to Out on a Limb, a Lovers Lane podcast. My name's Stephen Lashley. I'm one of the hosts of this podcast, and I'm joined by...
And I'm Reverend Macy Liptoy, the co-host of this podcast.
How's it going, Macy?
It's going good. Good day.
Good day.
Yeah.
We've got a good one for you today. I'm going to just steal that. That's Steve Harvey saying.
I think we should roll with
Stephen
it.
Lashley saying. Sorry, Steve. It's mine now.
Congrats.
We had... Jenna Dobyns, who's one of our close friends. She's a student at UNT, but she has also just completed training as a doula, which, if you don't know what that is, neither did I. So you're in the same boat that I was in. I didn't know what a doula was. But she just shared her experiences on that. And we also
brought on Jennifer Sutcliffe. She is the pastor of kids ministry at this church. She's gone to seminary. She's incredible and has done a lot of amazing work with our kids ministry here, and is also a parent, a mom. So she's had two boys, Anthony and Benjamin, and she talks about them in the podcast and her experience with having kids, because this episode is about, kind of God in flesh. We're in this season of Advent where we anticipate the birth of Christ and talk about what that's like. And in the Gospels, we hear the birth story. And so we thought it'd be interesting to bring these two people on who have kind of intimate experiences of, creating life and bringing it into this world, and hear what they have to share about it.
Well, Jenna doesn't have kids.
Right. She's a doula, but she shares her experience.
She knows about it. Yeah.
She knows more than both of us combined.
Yeah.
So
this was an interesting this episode, because we really dive deep into what it was like for Mary and Joseph, and for Jesus to be a infant born in a stable and to grow up as a young kid, and all these kinds of things, and to use our imaginations, and how kids are good at using their imaginations and accepting mystery and talking about what that looks like. So yeah, it was a great episode, I thought.
Yeah, it's really enjoyable, and it's always great to get to interview people that know more about stuff than you do in really intimate ways. Yeah.
I know nothing about children or like birthing
or
children
childbirth
or anything of that sort. So it was a good learning experience for me.
Yeah.
But we just hope you enjoy this episode with Jen Sutcliffe is what she goes by, and Jenna Dobyns.
Yeah.
What's up, y'all? How's it going? How's it going, Jen? Jennifer, do you prefer Jen or Jennifer for the podcast?
Jen, but only if it has two N's.
Only if it has two N's.
So can I say Jen? Every time I say
Or it
name?
could be Jennifer. Either's fine.
I'm going to say Jen.
So it's a little confusing because we have Jen and we have Jenna. Can I call you Dobyns? Or So it's Jen with two N's and Jenna.
Also with two N's.
Wait, yeah, I have two N's.
You have, yeah. It's a little confusing today, but we're gonna be good. It's gonna be
I wish you
great.
the
So
best of luck. You'll be fine.
thank you. Yeah, that's on me and Macy.
Actually, I think that this might be on me, actually.
Yeah.
This is my fault. This is what happened.
Macy, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm trying that new Irish cream cold brew from Starbucks right now. And y'all, I forgot how much I loved this coffee.
We start off almost every podcast so far with
the coffee reference.
with some dialogue on coffee.
Well, because it's always either in the morning and I haven't gotten it yet, or in the afternoon and I really need it. So, yeah.
We keep recording at like nap time.
Yeah.
Or like that hour in the morning where it's kind of a dead hour.
Like right before lunch where you
That 10 o'clock.
Yeah, you should be doing something, but you're really tired, so you're just kind of waiting till lunch to get the next energy boost.
Yeah, that's not good. We got to stop doing
No,
that.
we should adjust that.
This is a 3:30 record time, folks. So
Got this.
Woo!
I was
Just
glad
so
to
you
see
know.
you walk in with your coffee, though.
Yeah, I mean,
Good sign.
I drank mine.
I
in the
was
car.
asleep on my couch before this happened. So,
you were asleep on your couch?
yeah, I woke up at 2:30 and was like, oh no!
Man, couch naps are underrated. I'm not gonna lie.
They really are. My dog was cuddling with me, so I was like, this is a good day. He's cute.
It's your new COVID dog.
Yeah, my COVID dog. Yeah,
Very good.
he doesn't have COVID for listeners. I just got him during COVID.
dog.
His name is Indiana Bones. He is the sweetest dog in the world.
So that's a thought.
Yeah.
Like, okay, hold on. How long have we been in this COVID time?
Like
March.
10 months.
Since March?
Yeah.
Someone could have
Had a baby.
like, it's like COVID time.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Someone could have
What-
had a
how many-
full human.
I want to know how many people that's happened to.
If this has happened to you, if you have had a child during this time of COVID, like start to finish, reach out to us because we're interested in your experience.
Like as soon as you were on, it's like it's got to be within the time frame of lockdown, like lockdown in March,
Like March 15th,
and then you've just had a baby.
like a month ago,
Like yeah,
right? Like a month ago.
It would be November.
March.
You'd have a March.
Congratulations.
April.
It'd be
May,
like
June.
Valentine's Day. Well, no, Valentine's Day we weren't on lockdown.
It literally, if someone would have to have a baby like next week.
For it to be like perfectly 9 months.
I think so. Because I'm thinking like March 15th. Did I do that math right?
Well,
I went to seminary,
Sort of.
not. No. Jen's like, no, you didn't at all. You're dumb.
Jen's like, no, you're wrong.
but congratulations if you have had a baby.
If you
That's true.
During COVID. It's been a bit of a test for you, I'm sure.
Yeah, if you've had a baby in COVID,
Yeah.
can you imagine that just being? I mean,
No.
well, I mean, I can't imagine that. Obviously,
Fair.
Never.
That's fair.
Yeah.
To not be able to have people come visit your baby, you and your baby. Like,
Yeah.
That's the best thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
Like while you're in the hospital or
Is
just
have these
in
two,
the
she'll
home.
have these two boys. It's the best
Yeah.
thing I've ever done. And I couldn't wait to show it off and share it. It'd
Yeah.
be awful.
I mean, my cousin had a baby in October. So not quite COVID baby, but I haven't met her yet because of this. And she's real cute too. I see pictures. I'm like, some babies are not super cute. This baby's real, real cute.
All babies are cute.
Thank you, Jen, for correcting my.
I was not.
You
I'm
don't
not
agree?
cute now. My mom will listen to this and be like, Stephen, that's not true. But
You were a cute baby. Like, you're my mom, so you get paid to say that. So
I peaked at around 5 or 6.
I don't know if I've
downhill
ever
since then.
peaked. I don't think I've peaked yet.
Oh, come on.
Come on.
Jen's like, nah, you definitely did last year. It's over.
Jen's like, I didn't say that.
So speaking of
like-
babies, and
Jen's like, come on.
we should probably get to the topic of today's discussion.
Honestly, having babies during
Yeah.
COVID, it's not far off from what we're talking about today, folks.
No. So, I mean, we've got
So
Jenna Dobyns here with us, and she is now a doula, which what is that, Jenna? I don't really know how to describe it.
Yeah, a doula is a non-clinical support person for women during their childbirth experience.
Oh, wow.
So, like physical, emotional, and educational support is what a doula provides.
Gotcha.
So it's also, you're not just a doula, like you're a student at UNT, and like, who just wakes up one day and wants to, honestly, I'd never heard of what a doula was until you're like, hey, I'm a doula now.
Yep.
Like, what is that?
Yeah. I don't think in college I would have woken up and been like, you know what I really want to do? I want to help women give birth to babies. Like, what?
Yeah.
What spurred that decision for you?
Well, I grew up watching Call the Midwife with my dad on Netflix.
Wait, what is that?
It's a show on Netflix
What,
about.
I mean, it's about midwives, but what
Yeah.
is like? They
It's
just follow
like-
midwives around, or
Yeah, it's like set in the like 50s and 60s in London.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Wait, is it fiction?
No, well, no, it was written. It's like inspired by a
okay.
memoir written.
But they're not
by-
like actually midwives.
They are, yeah.
Oh, the actors are.
Oh, I don't know if the actors. I don't think they are.
That'd be
but it's
interesting.
inspired by a book
I see.
by a midwife. Yeah.
I gotcha.
But yeah, so I grew up watching that, and then was just always kind of interested in it. And then I used to go to school in St. Louis, and a coworker of mine went and became certified as a doula, and I was like, no way, I've always wanted to do that. Like, tell me more about it. And so she gave me the information on the training, and so I finally was able to do the training in March. Unfortunately online, but
Yeah.
still all the same.
Yeah,
So
Dang.
that's cool.
So have you assisted in any births yet?
I have not yet.
Okay.
Because as a doula, once you become certified, your options are kind of either start your own
Gotcha.
business or go and work with a collective. And I'd really like to work with a collective, but having a hard time finding a job at the moment. So haven't had that experience yet, but I did, after my certification, I worked with a doula in my hometown over the summer and like interned with her. So like continued that education. But
That's awesome.
Really great.
That's really crazy, honestly. Like, I don't think that's something that most people do. So that's like a really cool experience. And hopefully you get to like help someone soon,
yeah,
I think.
for sure.
Yeah. So, can you say it one more time so I can still wrap my head around it? So you said it's non-medical. What is it? So what is it? Is it?
Yeah, so
Say it
you're
one
not
more time.
medically certified. So like I'm not the person that will deliver the baby. But it's you provide physical support and care to mothers before birth, during birth, and after birth. And so it's physical care, emotional support, as well as education. And I think that's really the on the more important side of a role of a doula is to really educate mothers so they have the ability to have informed choices during their birth process, and that in that way, kind of a mainstream doula like is that sort of triad of physical, emotional, and educational support. But you also really have doulas who promote like the birth justice side of it, so like the social justice
What does that look like? What does that mean?
Yeah, so doulas actually have been shown in research studies to really have a profound impact on lowering maternal mortality rates.
Really?
So, yeah, and there's actually a huge disparity between the statistics of women of color and their maternal mortality rates and white women and their statistics. And so doulas have a big role in lowering those statistics.
What do you think the primary reason for that is? That's so interesting. Yeah.
Well, part of it is that doulas, your primary focus is the mother. And so the leading cause of maternal mortality in the U.S. is hemorrhaging after birth, which is something that can be easily caught as long as you're just being attentive to the mother after birth. And totally preventable. So having a doula really lowers those statistics because it's someone there to advocate. Advocate's a great word to describe a doula, to advocate for the mother.
So you're paying attention to a mom basically throughout the entire process, through carrying, through birth, and then postpartum.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you said it's physical, emotional, and I would imagine probably you could tie in spiritual
Yeah,
into that, right?
definitely.
Yeah. So what is it like? What do you mean by physical? Like, what does that look like?
So
This is all a learning experience for me, folks. I don't know. So what does it mean for like physical support? What does that
It
look
sounds to me
like?
like, you see in like TV shows, obviously, neither of us have been in a room with someone giving birth. Jen, you can probably talk about this to experience. But, I imagine like the baby gets whisked away and that's the attention of all the doctors and nurses and everything. And people, you don't look back to the mom in a lot of ways. And yet
yeah.
that
I didn't
seems
think
to be,
about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
And in many ways, doulas advocate for both mom and baby. But it's really to ensure that the experience is beneficial for all. But so physical, giving birth and being in the process of being pregnant, like there's a lot of physical discomforts that come with that. And so doulas will do a lot to, educate and provide ways to kind of alleviate those discomforts. So like during birth, being trained as a doula, you learn a lot about how to like alleviate a lot of the pressure that mothers are feeling, and how to make it less of a painful experience and more of something that is really meaningful.
How do you make that less of a painful experience?
I think I read somewhere
Like-
like if you shove in like the hip bones or
Yeah,
something.
that's called
What?
counter pressure.
You shove in the hip bones.
You like the I'll stop talking. You go. Obviously, this is your training. This I just got excited because I knew something.
Shoving the hip bones.
It's called counter pressure. It's like because there's so much pressure pushing down on the pelvis from the baby that it's really helpful to press.
So like you're just shoving
yeah, I
right
mean,
there.
but yeah, it's something too that
I'm so fascinated by this.
Maybe you should get out a notepad because
I know.
you're about to get married. So at some
Yeah,
point.
I mean, that's down the line. So.
Actually, I think when I was training to become a doula, I was talking to Taylor about it once, and she was like, "You can be my doula someday."
Oh yeah. For those, Taylor is my fiance, and we'll be getting married in February. So we're very excited about
Yay.
that. Kids are down the line, and yeah, DJ, thanks a lot. I do have a lot to learn, and that's why I'm excited about this episode because I have literally no idea what I'm talking about. Like pushing in the hips. I don't know what that means, but that sounds interesting. So stuff like that. So like providing physical. Did you have a doula?
No, I did not have a doula,
Okay.
but I would have loved to have somebody to call and ask some questions too.
Yeah, and that's another big part of it, just
The
having
educational
someone
bit?
to guide you and give you support and not like it's not so much like telling you what you should do, but like giving you all of the options so that you can make informed choices and know what you want and what.
What is like one or two things that you would be able to share with somebody that's like maybe giving or is pregnant and getting ready for birth that they wouldn't normally know?
I think that we as a society lack so much already in like educating women on what giving birth is like and like what your body goes through when you are pregnant and the changes that your body goes through physically and
I wish everyone could see Jen's face right now.
yeah.
But you're right. Absolutely right.
If you're
Yeah.
listening to this, please go to YouTube and watch it just to see Jen's face.
Did you have that same sort of experience, like where there were things that you just couldn't ever even have thought of or expected?
I took a Lamaze class, in the only one given I think in Dallas, and really felt empowered just because I had some knowledge.
Yeah.
More than what to expect when you're expecting could tell me.
Yeah.
Oh, that classic book.
Yeah.
I think my mom still has it
around.
on the
Yep,
shelf.
It's
Yeah.
been around, still around.
But yeah, I'd agree. Like just knowing what your body is going through is really empowering.
Yeah. Having another human being inside you, like what a thing.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Just like, I mean, Jen, you obviously have two children that are biological children that you brought forth into this world.
That you
Congratulations,
brought forth
by the way.
What a way to phrase that.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I
That
mean,
you've
I
that
just
you-
can't
that
imagine.
you carried.
That sounds worse.
Yeah.
Carried? I don't know.
We said that the Mother Mary carried Jesus,
She also
So-
brought him forth into the world.
brought forth into
In the fullness of time.
in the fullness of time. Galatians 4.
So, just for those of us who either, identify as male and will never have that experience, or, those of us who haven't had a child, like, what is that whole experience like? Because I imagine we're talking a lot about Mary right now and that expectation of, like, that waiting, the anticipation, but I don't know. Like, I imagine it's a different moment when you become a mom and how you identify with Mary. So if you could speak to that a little bit, that'd be cool.
I remember being pregnant during Advent.
Oh, wow.
Were you really?
Very, well, no, not very, but finally people could tell.
But you knew, and
yeah.
people around you could.
And that was really a beautiful Christmas Eve. We got to light the candles at church and
Oh, wow.
get to experience that. It's amazing. I don't know what else to say. It's magical. It's I can understand. I think you just have to accept, like it is. And so then what? So how is this possible? Was her wonder question about it. It wasn't challenging it. It was just really in awe about how this could possibly be, because it just is.
Wow. I've heard a lot of, women talk about how I follow this person on Instagram who just had a kid, and she's been very open with it and how kind of like a woman's body knows what to do. And so, I'm just interested, for the listeners, like, what does that look like, especially on the doula side of it? And like, what does that feel like when just like the way you were created is to create life? What does that feel like? What does that look like?
Well, Jen can speak to what that feels like. 'Cause, while I'm a doula, I have not given birth, so.
I remember really wanting my body back.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
It's really not
Yeah.
mine.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think that's a
That's
valid thing.
interesting.
Like, there's a lot of moms out there who don't feel like they can say, oh, I felt like it wasn't my own. Like, it was this weird kind of dichotomy of, I was really excited, but I also was really nervous.
Not- yeah.
And, like, there was a lot of things that I was like, this is very weird. What do I do with this? And so, I mean, you can obviously talk about just the education of, like, you know, of postpartum depression and prepartum depression. And what does that look like? And how can we provide resources
Yeah.
for women out there who are experiencing that dichotomy of, I'm very excited about this, and I also feel like I don't fit in my own body anymore.
Yeah, and that's totally normal, and I think part of that is just talking about it. Postpartum depression is, you know, it's not a rare occurrence.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think talking about it is the first step, and also, like, just providing support where you can, and knowing that, you know, it's a normal part of the process.
I'm thinking about that, like thinking about Mary and like how beautiful sounding we make Christmas.
Yeah.
And just the look on Jen's face is like, but just like how wonderful and exciting and beautiful Christmas sounds. And then Mary gives birth to the Savior of the world in a manger, in a cold manger, you know, and then we don't really know what that, like, you would imagine that she would experience some of the things that you are trained to help with, like postpartum depression and things like that. There's not really any stories about that.
Yeah, they'll talk about what happens to Mary after
Yeah.
Jesus is born. Like, they're still in a stable with, like, animal
Outside.
feces
Yeah.
and hay and all kinds of stuff. And I just, you know, I've been thinking about this episode topic, and the thing I can keep coming back to is, like, the messiness of flesh and the dichotomy of how, like, the God who created the whole universe, infinite and so massive we can't describe, became finite in this, like, really messy kind of place. And so I guess, you know, what do you kind of think about as a Christian of, like, having intimate experience with birth, that really kind of poignant moment that we all experience, whether we don't remember it, obviously, but everyone goes through it. And then combining that with, like, and God went through that experience, and Mary went through that experience. Like, how does that influence, now with your intimate knowledge of birth, how does that influence how you see kind of the incarnation of God in the world?
Yeah, I think it emphasizes, like you said, like it's a really raw moment, or a really raw experience and process and journey, and the fact that, like, Jesus went through that affirms that that's part of who we are, and it's not meant to be pristine and painless and perfect, but that's part of the story, you know?
Yeah.
It's part of the ongoing creation that
Yeah.
we're all a part of. Yeah. It's messy
Yeah.
and beautiful
Yeah.
and not so great sometimes.
And sometimes really difficult.
It's very difficult.
And I think just the narratives that I've heard from, you know, women across the board is that birth is never what you plan and expect. You know, I'm sure you meet a lot of moms who, like, I have this birth plan and I have this, you know, mixtape and I have this blah, 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 blah. And it never... I feel like you have a story, Jen. You want to share? Do you want to share the class?
I went in ready to go, no medicine, do this all by myself.
Wow,
and
really?
Had a C-section
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
at the end of the night. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that can be really traumatic when
Yeah.
you have a
plan.
plan and it doesn't go the way that you plan. That's also part of a doula's training, is to know how to support, you know, people that are giving birth that are going through this, like, emotional experience and then don't know how to deal with, you know, you have to be able to process that after the fact.
Yeah. Maybe we'll talk later.
Well-
12 years later, I'm still.
I'm genuinely interested in this because talk about a plan. How about showing up to the place where you're supposed to go be
No kidding,
registered in in Bethlehem, and then you don't have a place to stay,
Yeah.
and you're in a stable.
Yep.
What would you have said to Mary if you were the doula for Mary in that moment?
Good. This is a
Like,
good
what would you-
exercise.
Like if you're providing spiritual and emotional support for Mary in that moment, what would you have said?
That's a good question. I mean, you said this a minute ago, Macy, but like your body is prepared for this. Like a woman's body is prepared and knows what to do. So I think I would have just, held space for Mary and, said, okay, this is happening, like it's not what what you planned for, what you hoped for. But we're here and it'll be beautiful in some ways and difficult in others. And we'll get through it together. I guess.
Do you provide any emotional or spiritual support for the man? For like if Joseph's there?
Yeah.
Joseph.
And that's also part of a doula's job, is to ensure that the experience is supportive for both partners. And like we were talking about counter pressure a minute ago, kind of jokingly, but that's a really great way to involve the husband or partner, is to be able to teach them how to support whoever's giving birth, and that way it's an experience that they share together and that is really binding.
Yeah.
Jenna, if I can push a little bit more, I'm curious to know kind of like, what was your experience going from having this plan of like, I'm going in, I'm having a natural birth, it's going to be lovely, I'm going to feel every bit of it, and then ending the night with like the exact opposite of what you had expected? What did that feel like, kind of emotionally and spiritually? Like, did that shape or change your relationship with God at all?
I had to just trust.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, there's things that I process about it and wonder about it since, right?
Yeah.
Because our bodies are made to do this. I believe that, and yet mine didn't that day in the same way. But it did. It created.
Right.
It grew a baby. I was able to distrust. It wasn't what I wanted. But I think it was probably more disappointing the second time around.
Oh, really?
That the second child was just pretty much a guaranteed C-section, and then to realize I'd really lost that chance. But just trusted. David was in the room. He understood what was going on. He's a doctor. He understood what was going on. That helped.
Isn't that
It had
that's
been
so
a very
nice.
long day, so maybe
Sweet
it was
David
just time.
Sutcliffe, man. I love that, man. David, if you're listening to this, I love you. You are also the kids director here at Lovers Lane.
Not just a mom of two boys.
Not just the mom of two boys.
doesn't know much
You
about
have a
anyway.
wealth of knowledge of forming the young minds in the faith, and I would imagine you also walk that same like Jenna's role. You also walk a spiritual journey with moms as well. What's that been like? Do you have any stories where you've been able to provide just spiritual guidance for that?
We've really been blessed here at Lovers Lane through COVID to get to focus on that more.
Really?
Since COVID. So we were pretty siloed in that we'll just provide the child's education over here and y'all go to worship. And now we're worshiping at home with our kids. And so how can we support? And that has been a tremendous blessing and something we're still growing into.
Yeah.
How to encourage parents that they really are the most important spiritual influence in their child's life, and that's not meant to be scary.
Yeah.
Mary did not have any credentials or any business being the mother of God any more than any other mother on the planet.
Yeah.
Except that she was humble and she trusted. So I think getting that opportunity to just encourage parents that they are and they can and just trust it.
Isn't that so interesting? Like, none of us are qualified to do that. Like, how do you get qualified to be a parent of
I'm gonna say you don't.
and then
That's a big no.
like, not only that, and then you find yourself you've been entrusted with God's only son. And that's a pretty intimidating place to be. But I loved what you said there, where like that seems like something that could be so relatable for parents that are, they're providing, spiritual support, emotional support for their kid. Imagine where Joseph and Mary were, like, doing that same sort of thing. Yeah. Sorry.
I'm curious. I'm thinking about, we've talked a lot about parents and caring for moms and for partners and for fathers and whatever that looks like. But I wonder too, you work in the kids ministry, and like I have a younger sister. Now I was young enough where I don't remember the process of Morgan being born. Like I kind of remember her being little. I called her Doodlebug. It was real cute. Just to pat myself on the back real quick. I was a cute 2-year-old, but I'm sure there are a lot of kids that experience the process of having another sibling that they remember. Like, have you had any experiences of kind of guiding kids through this process too?
I can speak about Anthony's experience
Oh,
through
yeah.
it. That's where the church came in big for him. We were in the nursery, or he was in the nursery, and a lady from church came up. This was shortly after Ben had been born, so she knew Anthony had a baby brother at home. And she came to him in the nursery and said, "I've got something for you, Anthony," and told him. And he remembers, as almost a 12-year-old, remembers exactly how he felt that day. This is a special stuffy to him still. She gave him a dinosaur stuffy because you're a big brother, and that's really special.
Yeah.
And so he felt seen and important. And so I can mostly just speak to it there, that the church can really step in. People of the church can really step in and really just support and encourage all members of the family during this life-changing moment of a new baby in the family.
Yeah, because it really turns their world upside down in a lot of ways.
Changes everything.
Yeah, it changes everything. I mean, the people I follow on social media, this girl, she talks about how her dog is upset that like the baby's getting more attention. Like I can't imagine being an older sibling and then knowing like things have shifted in your house.
Yeah.
And what does that look like and how does that feel? So yeah, that's cool.
So this sermon series, we're talking about God's presence. And last week we talked about God's presence in the waiting. We talked about high stakes waiting and that kind of thing. But we also just want to generally talk about what it means for God to become flesh, like God taking the form of a human being, and being born as a vulnerable child in a very vulnerable position with, can you talk a little bit about how just that understanding that God becomes a child? Can you talk a little bit about either one of you? Either one of you can go first. It doesn't really matter. How that changes your outlook on the work that you do as a doula, and then the work that you do just in terms of walking. Also, I guess we should say, what age range do you really kind of are you focused on as a kids director as well, Jen?
So we have nursery through preteen, 6th grade.
Okay.
So good range.
Yeah.
It's a wide range of kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got
So
a good team.
how does that, how does that part of our faith inform just the work that each of you do? Or does it really like change that kind of perspective for you?
Yeah, I think, like I mentioned earlier, like a big part of that is just knowing that like that story validates what we go through, when we're born, what people go through when they have their own children, like it's messy, it's vulnerable, and it's important. Like the fact that, Jesus was a child, was born, and was born under circumstances that weren't planned. And yet he is the most important person in the Bible. And that just validates all of the experience, the wonderful parts and the messy and difficult parts as well. And thereby makes us valuable and our stories valuable in that way.
That was really good.
That was really pretty. You bring up an
good.
important word, vulnerability. And like, the only reason I'm touching on it is because recently in my family, like everyone decided to have a kid. So all of a sudden we have all these babies in the family, which is really great, but they're so fragile. Like I've never held a newborn until this year. My other cousin had a baby and I held her at like 2 months old, and she was this little, like tiny little fragile thing. And her head didn't stay up. And I was like, what do we do with this? And the fact that God was this little fragile, like squishy newborn, that's crazy. Like, that's crazy.
Did you just call God squishy?
God was squishy as a newborn. I'm not going to lie about that. If you've ever had a newborn, am I wrong?
God's a squishy.
Email Steven and tell him I'm right.
Pretty squishy.
That's what we're going to quote this. That's the
That's the poll quote for this episode.
yeah. We're going to pull that for this episode. What do you think, Jen? How does just God being in this vulnerable? Because Jesus, it's like a lot of these stories go from the birth, and then boom, adult.
Yeah.
How does the fact that Jesus had to go through being an infant, being, in the nursery,
And our kids' favorite story of being lost in the temple.
yeah.
Oh,
Our
yeah.
kids love that story. There must be so much mystery and wonder in that story because they get, that's the one I tell it. It's the second Sunday of Lent, and I tell it every Sunday after that as part of their story as it progresses. And they love that part. That's their favorite
Really?
part. That Jesus was lost in the temple, because I think we've all experienced losing a child somewhere. Or
I did it on purpose
being
to my
lost.
mom. Yeah.
Same.
But it's so, just the mystery part of it all. I think that's where I get most excited about working with kids is it's opened up the Bible for me. It's opened up the way I can relate different aspects of God's story together and see God's hand in the entire story. I went to seminary,
Yeah.
and I'm still blown away more actually by working with children and their stories, just giving that space to really be curious about it.
Yeah.
And
There was
watching
one
where
time
they're curious.
I was talking with you about this, and you talked about how it's changed your theology. Like you said that there are things that you would have maybe have said before you were a kids director or worked with kids for a long period of time. You can just stop saying it, 'cause it's like if you shouldn't say it to kids,
If I
you probably
wouldn't say
shouldn't
it-
say it to.
Yeah. Yep. So I had a pastor friend who was a youth director friend when we were youth directors, and he said, if you can't explain it to a child, then you don't really understand it.
Oh.
And I took that as challenge accepted. Like, okay. And it's true. If I get uncomfortable with talking, I grew up with a lot of sin language. And that
Yeah.
I was a sinner, and I knew that as a child, and I grew up knowing that I'm not really comfortable looking at my two little boys and telling them that they're sinners.
Yeah.
They miss
That's
the
so
mark
interesting.
sometimes. They miss the mark sometimes. They don't always get it right. But it's changed my language. It's changed what's important, and maybe that's not the most important thing they learn yet. The
Yeah.
world is going to tell us that plenty quickly enough.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not what they need to hear from me and here at the church.
Oh.
So it has changed what's priority. for
What do they
sure.
need to hear?
That they're loved.
That they're loved.
Absolutely, that they're loved. And that they're blessings, and that they are a valuable part of this this story that they're in, this story of God that they're in, that they are an important, valuable part of it, and they're blessings.
So I love what our kids. Can you talk? What are are they core values? No, you. What do you say? You play.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are those?
So we.
I love this so much.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can do it right.
This is valuable for adults to remember too.
I'm about to say this is like core value for like Christianity.
We are loving all kids as we experience God together through play, wonder, story, prayer, and blessing.
Play,
And
wonder,
that-
story, prayer, and blessing.
Wow.
I love that.
I feel like that sums it up, honestly. Like that sums up the Christian experience.
All the things.
Like if we think we're too highfalutin to play,
Highfalutin.
I'm going to use that word.
Highfalutin.
Highfalutin. If we're too highfalutin to play in the story of God, like what are we doing? You know?
But it is. To play in the story of God, that's beautiful. Yeah.
Thanks. That's why I went to seminary.
See?
To have those little quotes to just.
Reason number one.
Yeah.
That's it.
I told someone that a couple weeks ago. They asked me, they were like, you should just have good quotes. And I was like, that's all they taught us in seminary was just great quotes to
Sound
say.
bites.
Yeah, sound bites to sound cool. And that's about it. I'm
Sound
kidding.
bites.
Obviously, if you think that's all they taught us, please don't think that. We promise we learned things.
Someone's gonna quote you and miss it.
My board's going to go, hey, you said this 3 years ago.
We
Thanks.
appreciated all of what you had to say there, except
Except that one part.
episode 4 of that Owl podcast.
You got a little crazy. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I think about God being squishy as an infant. I think about
Yeah.
how relatable that is to us. It's just really, really interesting to me.
I have a question for both of you because I've just kind of thought about, that, we went to seminary and they told us there were books of the Bible that were left out of our canon because for whatever reason. And there's this book out there that's like the Infancy Gospel is what they call it. And it's about Jesus as a kid. And like he does crazy things or whatever because he's a kid. So I'm wondering, if you could add a story, it doesn't have to be like a real story. Like if you wanted to just add a story to the Bible about Jesus, like what kind of story would you want to be in there that's not in there now, especially for our kids? Like what would you wish was included in the canon?
That's a really cool question.
Yeah.
That's a cool question.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because like you said, we jump from here's this squishy baby to here's this fully grown, realized rabbi, adult male in the text. And there's a whole life in between that. And we say that God experienced the whole, the whole of the human experience, which means like God was a toddler and God was a teenager and all that awkwardness, and God was a young adult, unsure and figuring out, what do I want to do with my life? What stories do you wish were included?
I think if I had to pick, I wish that there was, I wish all of that was in there.
Right.
Because I think that I was at Sarah Luganville's house the other day, and
Yeah.
I stole a book off her bookshelf to read while I
Sorry,
was there.
Sarah.
Yeah. She has a book called Liturgy of the Ordinary
Yeah.
that she talks about.
Walter Brueggemann.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like reading the first
Is it not?
few.
It's the one with
I
the
don't-
peanut butter and jelly picture.
Yeah. I don't remember the
There's
author.
another author, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
It's
Sorry,
a
folks.
great
It's not Walter
Yeah,
Brueggemann.
but I was just reading the first few pages, and it talks about how God is in all of the in between moments. Like the waking moments, the while you're driving. All the ordinary things that we do. And I wish that there was more of that in the Bible, because I think that is such an important message.
Yeah.
If I had to pick one, I think I would pick stories about Jesus growing up and the relationship between him and Mary and Joseph. Because I think, that's something I feel like is lacking, that and that relationship between parent and child is so important. And something I feel like that both parent and child often, like, that's something you don't always feel secure in, or that's something that you feel seeking in, or like, if you needed advice, you're like, oh, I wish I could, have a Bible story about that. Especially like growing up, like you said, like such a formative time. And something that I think really is, if you think about the ordinary, really is filled with the Spirit. And so that's what I would pick.
It was Tish Harrison Warren.
Good job, you got it.
And that's why
Liturgy of the Ordinary. That's a good
Peanut
book.
butter and jelly on the front.
That's right.
That's why we all have
Shout out to
computers
Sarah.
in
Thanks,
our
Sarah.
pockets. We can
Yeah.
pull it out and Google things. But I like that the extraordinary and the ordinary. Like God comes not in the thunder or the fire, but in like the silence.
Yeah.
And
And the ritual and the actions of the Spirit in those moments.
About you?
So when you asked that, I immediately thought of things my kids have done.
Oh yeah.
And I wonder if other parents would, a memory of Anthony on the soccer field. The whole team's gone on, but he's back with the kid from the other team who fell.
Oh.
And he's hanging out in the back of the field, making sure not even a friend is okay. Or the way Anthony makes sure, or Benjamin makes sure we get cups of water when we're working outside, or whatever it is. I wonder if other parents would immediately think of examples of their children and how those would be stories of Jesus as well, like Jesus taking care of a friend on the soccer field. Why not?
I love that your kid takes care of other kids on the field. When I played soccer as a 4-year-old, I made
I jumped over him.
I made flower crowns. I ran away and made flower crowns, and then I threatened to quit unless I could play goalie because I didn't want to run. 4 years old. That was not Jesus, but I think
It might have been,
Does Jesus make flower crowns?
and Ben was independent, and why not?
Jesus got lost in the temple.
So who knows?
I really love that though. Just imagining, that Jesus is going to have that others orientation. We know that is there when he's an adult in his adult ministry, and he has that others orientation as a kid. And I got to imagine that parents see that same sort of thing all the time. I'm sure you see the Jesus of the Gospels in your kids, caring for people that really can't care for themselves. It's a really beautiful thought, actually.
What story would you want included, Stephen?
What story would I want included? Gosh, I don't know. I think I'd go along the lines of what Jen's saying there. I wonder if Jesus wasn't an angsty teen, was he?
I mean, I wonder. Like in Mark,
No,
we get
it's
a
really not.
we get a Jesus who weeps in the garden. Like in the
That's
Gospel
true.
of Mark, we get a Jesus who's very, I don't want to say angsty, but very much feels the weight of his responsibility. And so, like, does a teenager, we understand Jesus to be fully God, so knowing all things, does that teenage Jesus know what's coming and like bear that burden? And so imagine, if 30-something-year-old Jesus weeps in the garden, what does 16-year-old Jesus do with that information? I wouldn't handle it
I
well.
would want to hear. I want to hear more of theirs. I love the side conversations in like all my TV shows that really aren't that important to the plot, but they characterize just a little bit more. Like they put a history to their relationships and things like that. Like I want to hear more from Lazarus.
Yeah.
I think, and their relationship, and for Jesus to weep when Lazarus dies, like that comes from a depth of a relationship that maybe we don't have the backstory on, but I wonder about those moments, because that's what this series is all about. God's presence, right? Is God, who's beyond the 93 billion light years universe that is observable, that we can know about. God,
Still growing.
and still growing and still expanding, and that's just observable. That's all we can see.
Which that's freaky.
It's a big
Just
universe.
gonna say.
The Word beyond that chooses to transcend all of that and become flesh as a squishy baby, as Macy puts it.
It's true.
And not only that, but be one of the most present beings with other people. Like what I mean by that is that Jesus had time for everybody. Like there's a story in where he stops with Bartimaeus.
Oh yeah,
on the
Mark,
way.
Yeah.
And it's literally right before he's about to go into Jerusalem to be crucified. And he knows this. No one else knows this. They think he's going to go into Jerusalem to like conquer,
Yeah.
be another David, and free Israel. Little do they know he's going to be a crucified savior, right? But he's on this road and he stops. The text literally says Jesus stood still for this random person on the side of the road that's crying out, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me, right? And he stops with this person and says, what can I do for you? He stops, stands still, and says, what can I do for you? And like, I got to imagine that he does that all growing up, We know Jesus to be 34 years old when he starts his public ministry. And there's 34 years there where Jesus stops and stands still, like the unnamed people, the unnamed stories of people of Jesus standing still. I love that verse so much. Jesus stood still. And I'd imagine that Jesus was present that way with like Lazarus, with a bunch of people.
If you're a parent of a toddler, imagine Jesus toddler standing still. Wouldn't that be a great gift for you? For your toddler to stand still for like 5 minutes. Just saying.
DJ's nodding.
Well, and I think it's interesting too because you think about our journey as people, and the things that like the patterns we have and the things that we do and like helping people on the soccer field, like Anthony learned that from somewhere. And so you think about the things that Jesus does, and we have that missing period of time, that formative period of time, and you wonder like how much of this did he learn from Mary and Joseph, and what was that relationship like, and how, like, in what ways did Mary nurture those tendencies or teach him those tendencies, and that grace and that care, and what was that interaction like?
Yeah.
Really, this is a podcast to talk about how cool Mary is.
Mary's my favorite part of the story.
Mary's your favorite part?
Yeah.
Man,
But really,
What about you, Macy? Do you have
A story I want to add?
yeah, what would you add?
It's a great question.
I know it's your question.
Oh, yeah, I forgot I
You
asked that
literally just
question.
asked that question.
My bad. That was not like an intentional, like, oh, I'm so smart. That
A
was just,
humble brag.
I forgot I
Yeah.
asked the question. Oh, man. You know, I think I would like to see, and this could muddle with some theological concepts that like you'd have to go back and deal with, but you know, if that whole omnipotence thing, right? It's the all-knowing. Is that omnipotence? I get the mixed.
All-knowing, omniscient.
Omniscient. I get them mixed up. So my bad.
Omnipotent is all-powerful.
Oh yeah. I gotta remember that. That's in the Hallelujah chorus. Anyway, so the all-knowing part of Jesus, like, I wonder if it develops as Jesus human develops. Like, does he come to understanding of who he is as an infant, and like what I want, if that's the case, like I'd be interested to see like how Jesus responds to his own calling as 100% God. Because I think about, you know, my own teenage experience of responding to the call to ministry. You know, did that happen to Jesus? Does that understanding of that he's fully God, does that develop over time?
Yeah.
And if so, like I want to see that development happening, and Jesus talking about like the realization of the fullness of who he is.
Yeah.
You know? I
And of
think that'd be
course,
really
Mary
cool.
knew. Mary, did you know? Mary did know.
As a matter of fact, she did, and she
She
doesn't need
knew.
you to ask. Just
Mary knew, and yeah, I bet that's a big part of what you're saying.
yeah.
Mary saying, yeah, the angel came to me.
Well, yeah. Does she teach him?
Yeah, I want to hear that story.
You know, does Mary sit down
Mary.
with Jesus and say, "All right,
Yeah.
like you must know the circumstances under which you were born"?
Yeah.
Ooh, that'd be cool.
It's got to be part of the conversation.
I mean, it has to be.
Mary's not going to keep that secret.
No.
I guess she did treasure this in her heart.
might have.
Yeah.
Well, does Jesus ask? Does Jesus go, "Hey, Mom, I had this weird vision the other night," and she goes, "All right, it's time to sit down and have this conversation." I don't know.
Yeah.
Be interesting.
I want to, so much what I love about Christmas and Advent is seeing like kids and like the wonder, like what you're saying. I wonder, is there something that you can encourage, or kind of to wrap up, is there something you can encourage our listeners to think about whenever they're interacting with kids and even parents during this Advent season, to be inspired by the story of what's going on around them, and then to look to kids to see that wonder in their eyes and to encourage that? And is there something that some advice that you could give to like you said, sit with?
So I thought about the difference between Mary and Zechariah.
Mm-hmm.
And when Zechariah gets the news, he says, "How am I going to know that this is really happening?" When the angel came and told him about Elizabeth having John.
Yeah.
And then Mary gets the same exact news, and her answer, she still has a question, but it's much more open. How can this be?
How will this be?
It's more wondering than, I need to know, that I need the knowledge, I need the details, I need you to lay it out. When am I going to tell Jesus? Like whatever, right? It was open and wondering. When you were talking about Jesus and what he said, I immediately think about godly play. We don't actually say, "and Jesus said," we'll say, and then Jesus said something like. And Jesus said something like, "What do you need from me today?" Might sound like, "Hey, can I share my peanut butter and jelly sandwich with you at lunch?" Or it might have sounded different to the child, right? "Let the children come to me. if Jesus said something like, let the children come to me, then to a child that might register, a lady at church gave me a stuffed animal because she sees me and she saw me and I'm important too.
Yeah.
So I think you don't have to know all the answers. We don't know all the answers. Mary maybe knew all the answers, or maybe Mary was just comfortable with the wonder of it and the mystery of it and just resting in wisdom rather than facts and knowledge.
It sounds like what you're saying is we're in a very similar place that a kid's at.
Yes,
In
please
that-
be. That's the best place.
That we get to, yeah,
It really is.
that we get to wonder and accept the mystery. It's so much easier for a kid to accept a mystery, right?
I am noticing that. Well,
Yeah.
we start every single kid's
'Cause I
Sunday
want all the
school lesson.
answers.
I teach them the Trinity, and nobody's ever asked me to really explain it to them.
Are you
But we set
serious?
out- like, they're fine with that.
Like, oh,
we
yeah,
remember
okay.
God the Creator, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. And they're like, all right. And what's in the middle? Love. Love holds the Trinity together, and love holds us together, even when we're not right beside each other.
They're like,
They're
what's
totally
so
fine
hard
with
about
that."
that?
Yeah, like, they're going to grow up ready to handle all this Trinity talk. And
Say that's
Why
better than
not?
I explain it.
why
yeah.
not? Well, that's because if you can't get it in 2 minutes, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No, it's true. I mean, that's the question they ask, when you go up for your interview.
how
Is it
quickly.
a board? Is like, can you explain the Trinity to a 7-year-old? And I don't think I did a good job at that, but that is a
Works.
beautiful
There you
way
go.
to describe it.
Lan Hadley, and yep, take it.
Wow.
Jenna, what's a good doula tip for providing not physical support, I guess, but emotional and spiritual support to parents, or maybe just
Just in general.
in general, or that could be applied to providing that type of support to parents that people could generally apply to one another. That you feel like.
A good spiritual tip. I don't know. A lot of what Jen has said, like, and I'm still thinking about that book I mentioned, just that, like, there is holiness in the little moments, and in the mystery, and then not knowing, like, that's part of it, and that's what, like, I like this season of Advent a lot because there's this expectation, but there's also this wonder, like you said, and it's a time of joy, but it's also like a time of waiting, and that there is joy in the waiting, and in the little moments, and in invitations and all of it. So I don't know. That's
It sounded like what you're saying is just that, like what you said there was it's helping people recognize those little moments.
yeah.
I think that's a huge thing of what you're saying is in terms of like providing education. We don't have to have all the right answers in this time or like you don't even have to have a good explanation of the Trinity. You don't have to have a good explanation of how Jesus is both fully God and fully human. But you can help people walk a journey like you walk with people, where you're able to point out those nudges and those moments where, that was God. That was God's presence in your life.
If I could ask Jenna one more question, just for practical kind of advice for, parents to be out there, who might be experiencing some mental health struggles or whatever. Are there, online resources for them during this time that's, both exciting and very nerve-wracking and scary, or people who are just had a kid and are thinking, oh my gosh, how do I navigate this now?
Yeah. There are certainly plenty of online resources, and a doula is a really good resource, no matter what your plan is. I think a lot of people think that doulas are only for if you want to have like a natural birth at home with a midwife. And that's not true. Like doulas are there to support you no matter what your plan is, and no matter where your headspace is at, and no matter where you are in that journey. There's some doulas that are really passionate about postpartum work, and you can hire a doula just for that postpartum period or for all of it. And so a doula really is a good resource for those initial stages of parenthood. And then they're also good at connecting you with other resources too. And like I said, there's like, you just have to like search for what's in your area, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's
awesome.
where I would start.
So help is basically right at your fingertips. If you're needing help this season, basically you just got to go online and you can find help pretty quickly is what I'm hearing.
And also that you're not alone in needing help. Like I think everyone needs help in this season. And part of what doulas do is to make space for people giving birth to be able to decide on their own and be able to use their own voice. It's not to speak for you. It's to like hold that space for you to, to recognize the strength in your own decisions.
Love that.
Well, thank you so much for both being with us. Thank you, Jenna. Thank you, Jen, with 2 N's.
Jen.
Yeah. And folks, we'll see you next time.
If you enjoyed the show, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe on wherever you listen to your podcasts. That really helps us get the word out about Out on a Limb and helps other people find our podcast. From all of us here at Lovers Lane,
Thanks for going out on a limb with us.